geopolitical analyst Geoffrey Miller. Kia ora, good morning.
Good morning, Andrew.
Did I get that right? This is a part of the world Trump loves, and gosh, they love him, don't they? He's having a fantastic time.
Absolutely. It was indeed where he went the first time around back in 2017. In May 2017, he went to Saudi Arabia, and there were some wonderful images that came out of that trip. Most memorably, a photo of Trump placing his hand on an orb
Yes.
when he visited a center against extremism. And I'm sure some of your listeners will recall that photo because it's just was one of the standout photos of
Yeah.
the Trump presidency or his first term.
It could have been meme of
And
the year, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, and history is repeating itself in a sense because he's making the Gulf again as the choice for his first major foreign trip. Of course, he also did go to Rome on that unscheduled
Yes.
trip with the sad passing of Pope Francis. But other than that, this is the first time Trump has left the United States since he became president again for a second term back in January. So he's chosen three very wealthy countries, not just wealthy countries in the Middle East, but some of the three wealthiest countries on earth, the United
Yeah.
Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia.
He certainly has been warmly welcomed to these parts of the world. But let's start with Saudi, actually, because, this is a key influencer in Middle East geopolitics. It seems that the guy that wrote The Art of the Deal is doing some significant deals, depending on your currency, about $1 trillion in US arms bought by the Saudis. I mean, from a US trade point of view, that's great news. But from a Middle East stability point of view, is that also good news?
Yeah, there have been trillions of dollars of deals done and money committed from the Gulf states in terms of investments in the United States. I think the money to be spent on arms is a little bit smaller than the $1 trillion mark.
Okay.
I think it was 142 US billion-dollar arms package agreed by Saudi Arabia, but that's still a significant chunk of change. I mean,
Hmm.
that's US dollars. Put that into New Zealand dollars, we're up to what 350 million odd
Okay.
New Zealand, 350 billion.
Yep.
New Zealand dollars being spent on US arms going to the Saudi military. And but there've been deals done left, right, and center on this trip, and it's very much been the theme of Trump's trip. Trump is the deal maker, and the Gulf states are very much into doing deals at the moment. They're
Yep.
trying to build a post-oil future to move away from reliance on hydrocarbons, oil and gas. And they've come up, in the case of the Saudis, with Vision 2030,
Hmm.
which is focused on expanding Saudi Arabia into tourism, into sports, into business, to AI, all kinds of sectors. And the other Gulf states are pretty much on the same page. I mean, the UAE with Dubai has been in that space for a lot longer. It's been in the game of tourism, certainly for decades now, and it's also got great ambition. So Trump was in the UAE as his last stop, and the UAE pledged about $1.4 trillion in deals and investments in the United States over the next 10 years. I mean, we'll wait and see whether it materializes. There
Yep.
were similar large amounts pledged back in 2017, and in the end, it was a smaller fraction of those amounts. But even a small fraction
Yeah.
is still a large sum. I think back in Trump's first term, you ended up with about 100 billion US dollars being invested from the Saudi side. Okay, lower than the 450 billion dollars pledged, but it's still
Still a
an
lot of money.
astronomical sum by anyone's standards. And there is just the money there and the wealth in the Gulf to make those kinds of big moves that there just isn't in most other parts of the world.
I mean, that is big news in itself, and also, I suppose, part of the trade-off here is this is a part of the world which has a less than impeccable human rights record would be an understatement in that regard. Wanting to present themselves as more West friendly, I mean, that will be essential for their tourism aspirations.
Indeed, and look, Mohammed bin Salman, he's got a friend in Donald Trump
Yeah.
because Donald Trump really looked past the killing of Jamal Khashoggi back in 2018. In the end, but you can also say that Joe Biden also, in
Yeah.
the end, did that. And back in 2022, Joe Biden visited Jeddah in Saudi Arabia on the Red Sea coast and gave a famous fist bump. Some of your audience may recall those images of Joe Biden giving a fist bump to Mohammed bin Salman. So, in the end, everyone kind of moved on. When I
Mm.
say everyone, and that includes New Zealand.
Yep.
And New Zealand had negotiated a free trade agreement with the Gulf Cooperation Council that's made up of the six wealthy Gulf states that includes all three of the states that Donald Trump has been visiting this week, the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia,
Mm.
also includes three others, Kuwait, Bahrain, and the Sultanate of Oman. And so New Zealand has signed or is in preparations to sign that deal formally, but it concluded the negotiations on that back late last year.
Hmm.
And New Zealand's also signed a separate trade agreement, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement with the UAE. So New Zealand is increasingly looking towards the
Yep.
Gulf as well because it's a very good market for New Zealand's primary exports, dairy, beef in particular. These countries, they're not good at really producing food because of the nature of their climates.
Yep.
They're heavily reliant on imports. So for New Zealand, it's about food. For the United States, it tends to be about other things,
Yep.
about Saudi Arabia's live Gulf aspirations, real estate. In terms of the Trump family, the Trump family is engaged heavily in all kinds of deals in the Gulf as well. So there's just a lot of balls in the air when it comes to the Gulf right now for all kinds of reasons.
Kind of wanting to move past the deals and the trade and the parades and all of those sorts of things, and look at the impact that this is having in the other areas of the Middle East, which well are in the headlines for very different reasons at the moment. And if we can work through them, firstly, of course, now that the Assad regime has been toppled in Syria, talk about how the US may remove some embargoes, some penalties against Syria, Syria being welcomed back into the international community, some steps forward in that regard.
Look, it's been astonishing. One of the standout images this week was the photo of Donald Trump standing next to Ahmed al-Sharaa, who is the leader of Syria,
Yep.
and he used to be the leader of the Al-Nusra Front, which was Al-Qaeda's branch in Syria.
Yep.
And the US until December had a $10 million bounty on his head. It's extraordinary to see this. And not only that, Donald Trump has agreed to remove all sanctions on Syria. And Syria has been sanctioned by the US government since 1979.
Wow.
So almost 50 years of sanctions have now faded away. It's incredible. And the speed at which we've seen these developments in Syria is just astonishing. Remember, this was a client state in many ways of Iran up until just a few months ago. Then Bashar al-Assad fled in December, fled to Moscow,
Hmm.
and now suddenly it's within the US orbit. And Donald Trump is moving at great pace, great speed here, probably far faster than a lot of US allies would be comfortable with, including Israel, which has been bombing
Yeah.
um, parts of Syria and is very much wary of Ahmed al-Shara's leadership,
And,
given his background.
and
Put it
certainly interesting that Donald Trump, in that photo opportunity, he looked more friendly with a former terrorist than he does with some of his traditional allies at the moment. But just wanting to, I suppose, work through the others. You mentioned, of course, Israel and a push. An opportunity from Donald Trump for Saudi Arabia to recognize the state of Israel. This would be an absolute miracle if he achieved it. Is it possible, or is it pretty easy at the moment for the Saudis to bat away that idea?
Yeah, if we go back, just for the benefit of your listeners, they may recall the Abraham Accords that were signed under Donald Trump's first term. Now, they were signed with the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and several other states. But Saudi Arabia was not one of them. And Donald Trump would love to get Saudi Arabia on board with the Abraham Accords. And so actually did the Joe Biden administration. The
Yeah.
Joe Biden administration kept the Abraham Accords and they wanted to get Saudi Arabia involved. And then, of course, came October 7th. And Saudi Arabia said, no, no way
Mm.
right now. And Saudi Arabia does have some leverage because they didn't sign up to that agreement back in 2020. They do have some leverage, I think, when it comes to Gaza. There's no way on earth that would happen right now, that
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia would normalize its ties with Israel at a time where they're pounding the Gaza Strip. We had another 117 Palestinians killed overnight,
Yeah.
and there've been 3,000 Palestinians roughly killed in the just the last 2 months since the ceasefire collapsed again. 53,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed since the war began.
Mm.
It's just shocking, and the images continuing to come out of Gaza are horrifying. So there's no way on earth that the Gulf leaders, or in particular Saudi Arabia, would sign up to a normalization deal now. But it does give them leverage
Yeah.
into trying to convince Donald Trump to go with a more workable solution than the idea of displacing 2 million Palestinians and rebuilding Gaza as some business park, and which was some of the crazy talk we heard back in February. And
Yeah.
Donald Trump has been talking just in the last couple of days while he's been in the Gulf about a freedom zone in Gaza. I mean, he's absolutely right. Donald Trump is great at diagnosing problems. Gaza does need a total rebuild, but it needs to be rebuilt with the Palestinians very much front and center and in the picture, not out of it.
So not yet,
And the
but
hope.
yeah, but possibly the Saudis in a great position to negotiate a better deal for the people of Gaza for a long-term peace for this part of the Middle East.
You would hope so. And look, it's in a very concerning stage at the moment of Gaza because Israel is preparing to move in on a
Yeah.
wholesale basis and to occupy Gaza. And it's bad now, but it could get even worse if we end up getting essentially a full-scale occupation. And the talk is that will take place or begin once Donald Trump has left the Middle East this week.
Yeah.
There's some signs that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, though, are not on the same page.
Mm.
And this is some of the other developments that we've seen recently. It seems that likely that a deal will be done between Iran and the United States
Yeah.
on the nuclear program.
Yeah.
We've seen messaging not just from the US side. Trump says the deal is about ready to be signed. I mean, I think you always need to take what Donald Trump says with a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
there's been messaging from the Iranian side saying that that's about to happen as well. And there've been 4 rounds of talks brokered by the Sultanate of Oman, another of the Gulf states. And things actually look quite hopeful for that. Israel doesn't want that at all.
No.
Benjamin Netanyahu wants to bomb Iran
Yeah.
and bomb the nuclear program out of existence.
Mm.
So there's the differences there. And then there are other differences. The US negotiated the freeing of Eden Alexander, the last remaining US hostage, without telling Israel, without involving Israel.
Yeah.
And we saw that this week. That was another stunning development. And just one more, the US recently brokered a truce with the Houthis. Again, one that doesn't involve Israel. So
Yeah.
the Houthi rebels in Yemen are continuing to target Israel, but they're not targeting US forces now. And again, that was a stunning development just because Israel, one of the US's closest allies, wasn't even involved in the conversation.
Now,
So there are stunning developments left, right, and center in the Middle East at the moment.
certainly has been a dramatic week. Some deals done, and the US president goes home with a free new plane. But we haven't got time to get into the details of that one. Geoffrey, thank you so much for your analysis on this one. We continue to hope and pray that this troubled part of the world could have more stability and more peace going forward. But thank you for your analysis. Thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome, Andrew. Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.